I've got Richard Burnett with me, who's the Chief Executive of the Road Haulage Association. Morning to you, Richard.
Morning, Sean. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. Are you able to give us a latest this morning, just from the feelings you've got about what's going on with UK freight right now?
Well, look, it's going to be a building picture as the day goes on. This was breaking news last night, and we were having to deal with it in a live situation, trying to, urge British hauliers not to travel to the port of Dover and obviously Folkestone for Eurotunnel, to ensure that they're not caught up in the next 48 hours. But the inbound flow from Europe into the UK, that's the real challenge that I think we've got today. And I agree with what Ian Wright was saying, which is, there's been an enormous amount of stock building in terms of inbound for the UK market, transitional stock build as well, to make sure we've got sufficient, for the first quarter of next year. There will be fresh and chilled, product that will be on its way now. I think we'll have to assess as the day goes on how well that product is actually moving through, both Calais and Coquelles into the UK. And I'm sure the retailers will be assessing that situation sort of live as we go forward. I think the other point to make is, Grant Shapps reached out to me last night, assuring us that he's doing everything he possibly can to unlock this situation. Had been, talking to his French counterpart late last night as well, wanting to find a resolution to this issue. But this is the last thing that we needed just before Christmas, I would suggest.
And when you say the bigger challenge may be inbound, because of course that's not been blocked by France or of course the UK. It's travelled the opposite direction that's been blocked. So why is inbound into the UK so much of a challenge?
Well, I think if we've got, if we're going to have to instigate Operation Stack today, and we start to see a building of those EU vehicles that are heading back to Europe for the next sort of 48 hours, you will have European hauliers and logistics and distribution businesses questioning whether or not, they're going to send drivers over to the UK and they're going to get stuck here literally just before Christmas. And I think that's going to be the sticking point. So I think it's critically important that we find a way through this. I think some of this, we understand the reason for trying to stop the spread of this new strain. But I think if you look at COVID this year, HGV drivers have been classified as critical workers. The sickness rates have been incredibly low compared to, I guess, warehouse operatives. Anything from 3 to 8% would be the range for drivers. Because they pretty much work on their own, and they socially distance when they get to those distribution centres. So I think we've got to bring some balance to this and question whether or not this is also a negotiating tack from the EU and particularly the French at the moment.
You think that may be a possibility? Are you getting that feeling that others, in a sort of as high office as yourself, feel similarly?
I think it's a distinct possibility. Like I said, we've worked very hard over the last sort of 9 months to ensure that the borders have been kept open to keep that flow of products going. And we've managed to manage the risk through the supply chain, and the driver sort of fraternity. So, at this late stage, all of a sudden, we're seeing these actions taken. It does seem odd, from our perspective.
Does it seem odd, though, when, you have the Prime Minister making a press conference, as we saw over the weekend, saying there's a new strain that people now, so many millions of people have had to move into tier 4 in the southeast of England, where they cannot have anything like the Christmases they were planning just moments before. Is it that strange that France would say, look, we need a temporary block here while we figure out what's going on? They've put 48 hours on it. Why would that be so much of a surprise?
Because, I go back to what we were talking about right the way through the sort of COVID pandemic, where we've had to sort of manage different strains, different issues. Remember the mink farm, I guess over in Europe, where we saw a different strain and we had to manage those elements, but we maintained the flow of critical goods. So I accept that, in terms of broader travelling, passengers, etc., right the way through the pandemic, we've had this principle where all the borders have remained open to critical freight to ensure that food supplies and medical supplies, continue to move. So, as I say, at this stage, yes, I understand that we want to try and, contain the spread, But I think we've done that in a very practical way as a logistics industry across Europe right the way through this year.
Can I ask you about the reality of what happens now? You mentioned Operation Stack. Could you just briefly explain what Operation Stack is?
Well, I guess as soon as you stop the flow going into either Eurotunnel or into the port of Dover, vehicles start to stack up. Operation Tap is switched on quite regularly, which is where you have a slowing of the flow into Dover, for instance. But Stack is where it actually starts to build quite quickly, and you start to get significant numbers of vehicles. I'm sure that government will be looking to instigate, I guess, the things that it's been planning for in terms of Operation Brock, which is this larger scale, truck parking, in Kent. I think our biggest concern at the moment is just the sheer number of vehicles that could actually start to accumulate over a short period of time. Driver welfare, driver facilities, toilets, hot food. These are all things that really need to be considered, and very quickly. So government is really going to need to dust off its kind of contingency measures that it was planning to put in place for the transition. Clearly, this approach, this action has brought the need for that forward now.
Can I ask you then the reality for, say the Scottish fishing industry, where we heard there that there's already lorries en route to UK ports. What actually happens to a lorry that has fresh goods on that needs to get across to France? What happens to that lorry right now?
Well, if it can't go, it's going to be returned, and that load is going to effectively be written off because of the short shelf life nature of the product that sits on the back of it, and that will be a considerable, write-off value to either the haulier or the producer that's actually sent the goods. So we're looking at significant cost impacts back onto businesses. That's the reality of what's going to happen here.
And Operation Stack and those contingency plans you have in the event of a crisis a bit like this. What are the conditions like for a driver that maybe, there's 10,000 lorries crossing, and who knows how many will be backing up as the day progresses? If you're in the middle of all of that, what are conditions like if you're stuck in that situation for hours and hours, if not days?
Well, I think this is about access to food, isn't it? It's going to be a miserable period of time for these drivers that are just sitting, waiting, wanting to get back, I guess, to Europe. But, those practical things in terms of, toilets, where are the toilets? If I'm on the M20, are there sufficient toilets to be able to go to the toilet while I'm sitting here waiting? If they're going to instigate the truck parking facilities, which would hopefully be the right thing to do, possibly Manston might be rolled out fairly quickly. Then there may well be facilities there for drivers to use, and the potential to get access to hot food. And I would expect also medical, I guess, teams to be there to support those drivers as well, should there be any issues. But it's going to be a pretty frustrating, miserable existence for the next 48 hours.
Richard Burnett, thank you for giving us the latest